Now, just a little warning before we begin, there's going to be some major spoilers in this video for the 8th episode of Season 3 of The Bad Batch. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, you know what to do. Click away for now and come back after you have seen it. Alright, so I gotta start out by saying that, no, this wasn't exactly the best episode of the season thus far. A season that has very much been on point and felt very serialized in nature rather than more episodic or more adventure of the week style. And though I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who will call this one the F word, the filler word, I'm not going to do that. I'm instead going to call this one the calm before the storm, because I feel like we are on the cusp of, we are on the cusp of the back half of the season now. We have 8 episodes of 16 left. And I feel like we are on the verge of pretty much every episode here on out being one kind of revelation or big event after another, or maybe that's just hopeful or wishful thinking. But I really do feel like, with this of course wrapping up not only the season but the series, that we should be getting banger episode after banger episode again from here on out. That said, I certainly didn't hate the episode. I, for the most part, enjoyed it in and of itself, which is the key, right? If you are enjoying your time watching it and you're not looking at the clock waiting for it to end, well then, that's what it's supposed to be doing. It is supposed to be entertaining you, and it does pull that off. Though I will say that I enjoyed the B plot with Omega and Crosshair more than I did the A plot with Wrecker and Hunter going down to the bayou and having to avoid gators while chasing Praying Mantis Man with Fennec Shand. And then when they do find him, it's so dark, the screen is so dark I can hardly even see what's going on. But anyway, let's get into the episode itself now, which kicks off on Pabu, where Omega is waiting for a call from Echo. He is once again gone, not like we ever would want him in the episodes. Anyway, carrying on from last week or the end of last week's episode where Hunter said he wanted to figure out why Hemlock and the Empire were after Omega, they are going to try to figure out what an M count is. Which in itself leads to an interesting question of how many people even have any idea what midi-chlorians are in the Star Wars galaxy. How hard is it to find that information? Now something tells me back in the day the Jedi weren't exactly advertising how the Force works or that the midi-chlorians in everybody's cells are a big part of the Force and all that. Not that apparently you need midi-chlorians or a high count according to the Ahsoka series, but whatever. My point being, it seems like something you would be able to find information about if you just looked in the right place, that it would be available somewhere, though perhaps tech, as they kind of mentioned, they don't have tech anymore. Him not being around is the reason they just don't know how to do these sorts of things, perhaps. So anyway, they want to find out about midi-chlorians or M count, and they want Omega to stay behind. They want her to be safe, and this is where Omega, of course, argues that she should come. And I know a lot of people complain about how Omega seems to dictate the team or dictate the show in a way, that they are always taking her on dangerous missions for no apparent reason, but this time they put their foot down and she's going to stay behind with Crosshair. During this then we get some really good stuff, more good stuff between Crosshair and Omega, where we are seeing Crosshair become more protective, more, you could say, father-like towards her. I also enjoyed the exchange between them when Fee calls and Omega has to describe what she is, and Crosshair kind of gives her that deadpan look until she gives him the real answer.
Who?
She's a liberator of ancient wonders. Pirate. She's a pirate.
Turns out Fee has been trying to find out what M count is for them and isn't coming up with any answers. She says that tech was the database, and I was kind of hoping for a little more reaction from her when mentioning tech, considering there was kind of that interesting romance going on between them, but she says it nonchalantly, whatever. She also tells them that bounty hunters have been after M count targets for the Empire, I'm assuming hunting down Jedi. This, of course, leads them to the idea of finding a bounty hunter and then asking what is an M count. And so they decide to try to track down Fennec Shand, despite Fennec Shand, of course, previously trying to kidnap Omega. During this conversation, we see Crosshair's hand once again shake, and both Hunter and Omega see it as well. And before they go off, before Hunter and Wrecker go off, Hunter tells Omega to see if you can talk to Crosshair about getting his hand checked out, and she agrees to. Fee says she can hunt down Fennec Shand, and sure enough, we are soon seeing Hunter and Wrecker on a space station going into a cantina, and they find Fennec Shand discussing a business proposition with a Rhodian. She kicks the Rhodian out, talks to them, and soon they have hashed out a deal where if they help her capture a bounty she's been after for a while, she will direct them to someone who knows a thing or two about M count, somebody that has been hunting down these M count targets apparently, because she herself has not done it. And I'm pretty sure this is how we will connect the Bad Batch to Asajj Ventress. I'm going to assume she is the one hunting down M-count targets, though the question is, why exactly? Now, it could be she is working for the Empire. However, if they do indeed take Dark Disciple into account, which they said they would despite her dying in that book, well, she becomes, shall we say, involved with Quinlan Vos, and we know Quinlan Vos will eventually go on to work for the Path, or be a part of the Path, which helps Jedi and Force sensitives escape or flee from the Empire. So could it be that we will learn that Asajj Ventress is tracking down Force sensitives to help them escape from the Empire? We then see that Omega was successful in getting Crosshair to get a checkup essentially, and AZ has scanned him and found out there's nothing wrong with his hand apparently, and that it might be in his head. Either that or these experiments that he is not elaborating on are responsible for this. But something tells me that, as I've kind of been guessing all along, that it is indeed in his head, and it's going to just take a little bit of time to just overcome everything that has happened to him. And as we'll see throughout the rest of the episode, Omega is there to try and help. We're then on Fennec's ship, and Hunter and Wrecker are discussing if they can even trust Fennec or not, and they're doing it right outside of her cockpit, and she opens up the door and says, "You can trust me as long as you don't try to betray me, essentially. I won't betray you." We then learn that the target is Siler Saris, the slayer of Ordo Eris, and that he has stolen credits from the Haxian Brood, and they are, of course, from the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games, if you are curious. Kind of cool to hear them name dropped, I suppose. And so, yeah, that's kind of the mission. They just have to go catch the bad guy on his own turf, essentially, and other hunters have gone after him and not come back, so of course it's going to be dangerous or something. Soon enough then, they arrive on, let's call it Bayou Planet. They rent themselves a hovercraft, and out into the swamp they go, where they find out that the direct route, there are mines blocking their path, so Hunter and Wrecker have to go into the water to disable them right after she says no one should go into the water. And sure enough, some giant alligator creatures show up, the usual kind of antics ensue, and they take care of the gators and get away. However, briefly during all that, we cut back to Omega and Crosshair on Pabu, where Crosshair is doing some target practice. His hand is, of course, shaking again. And though Omega tries to boost his confidence by telling him he's still better than most, he points out that to be a sniper, you pretty much got to be the best of the best. And so they talk a little bit more, and Omega suggests that she knows something that might help because she believes it's probably in his head. Crosshair says he's not going to like it, and she confirms no, he's probably not. And again, this is a great little scene. These little cutaways are probably, or definitely the best part of the episode, in my opinion. And all of this continues to set up one of two things, I believe. Either at some point, probably in the finale, Crosshair is going to sacrifice himself to save Omega. But honestly, that feels so kind of generic and cliche. It feels like the obvious thing to do. And so the other option, which I'm leaning more towards, is that these two characters are going to be perhaps in a show together after this one, or somewhere else down the road. Doesn't necessarily have to be the next show. I just feel like their relationship has been probably the most interesting part of this season, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of good in this season. But to me, this dynamic works really well. It's working really well right now. So I would like to see what becomes of it if these two are the last two standing of the Bad Batch. What becomes of them a few years or several years or many years down the road? What does Omega become because she has been so influenced by Crosshair, and vice versa? I don't know. To me, that is a very interesting question, and one I hope and think we will eventually get answered. After all that, then, there's a pretty good scene with Fennec Shan talking to Hunter and Wrecker about, well, basically what happened to Omega. She seems to be fishing for information, either because she thinks that information can be valuable, or maybe because she actually cared about Omega. I tend to lean towards the latter. Hunter then learns that Fennec didn't quote-unquote lose Omega. She had the bounty called off on her by whoever had said it, which is, of course, Nala Se, and that whoever hired her thought that Omega would be safer in their hands, and apparently not, is what Fennec Shan says, though, of course, Omega is still safe and sound back on Pabu for now. They then eventually get to Praying Mantis Man's base. A big fight kind of ensues, nothing all too special. It's just kind of your standard Bad Batch fight. Eventually they subdue him and have taken him prisoner. And as I kind of mentioned at the top, it is very dark here, like really dark. I had a hard time seeing pretty much anything going on other than when he whipped out his little lightsaber, or light dagger, not an actual lightsaber. But anyway, it was really, really dark. I don't know why they're doing this. I don't know if it is somehow saving them money to kind of make it darker. They don't have to fully animate things. I have no idea, but I see no reason to make it this dark. Sure, you want a little bit of ambiance or whatever, you are in the bayou essentially. I get all that, but why is it so dark? After all that action then, we get a nice little calming scene, a final scene between Omega and Crosshair for the episode, where she is teaching him how to meditate, which she learned from Gungi and the other Wookiees on Kashyyyk, which we saw in Season 2. And when she mentions Kashyyyk, Crosshair seems surprised that she's been there. Omega then says, well, you've kind of missed a lot, and he agrees, which is kind of the underlying, I guess, message of the episode. That, yeah, Crosshair has been gone. He has missed a lot, and now he's trying to kind of assimilate himself back into life with the Bad Batch, or maybe a different kind of life in general. Because here he is meditating, which is probably the last thing Crosshair ever saw himself doing. He even seems rather reluctant, but does eventually give in and starts to meditate. And so I believe he is now on his road to healing that problem with his hand, thanks to the help of Omega. The episode then ends with Fennec Shand basically telling Hunter and Wrecker that, well, I don't exactly have the information you're looking for, but I know someone who does have it, and I will put them in contact with you, essentially. Hunter and Wrecker obviously aren't too happy about this, but Fennec Shand says, hey, you can either fight me, or you can trust me, and of course they end up trusting her. She then goes back into her ship and contacts somebody, and tells them about two clones being very interested in the Empire trying to find M-count individuals. And again, my guess here is Asajj Ventress. I feel like this is the easiest and probably best way to bring her in, since they are going to bring her in, we know that. It could also be, I suppose, Cad Bane. We know he is also going to be in this season. It could be the Empire. It could be Clone X somehow. Who knows? But I think the best and probably most obvious choice would have to be Asajj Ventress, and that next week we will get Asajj, and we will maybe learn how she has come back from the dead, what she's been up to, and what is she doing now. Why would she be interested in someone interested in M-count individuals? Could I be right about her maybe helping Quinlan Vos with the path right now? Or is she maybe done with all that and doing her own thing once again? We'll have to see. So in closing, it was a decent episode. Again, it wasn't the best one of the season. The B-plot definitely outshined the A-plot here. I liked everything with Omega and Crosshair. Though there were good things with Fennec Shand as well. Every time they kind of slowed down and had a conversation with her and didn't just want to, wrestle alligators in the bayou, I think it worked pretty well. All in all, a decent episode, and my guess again is that from here on out, it's going to be good episode after good episode. I think we're going to race to the finish line and see how this thing wraps up soon enough. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this episode of The Bad Batch. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you want to call it filler? Or was it just another good one in a series of good episodes this season? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.